Now, to make your own jump rings, the best thing is to use wooden dowel rods. Now, dowel rods can be purchased at craft stores, hardware stores, hobby stores, online even too. They're just wooden. They're nice because the saw just can saw right into them. You don't break your blades, and they're easy to wrap the wire around. You'll need to drill a hole all the way through the dowel rod. This is so you can wrap the wire easily around it. If you wanted to make tinier jump rings, I've even used skewers, barbecue skewers. The wooden skewers work well too. So once you've drilled your hole, you can take your wire. Now, it's important to use the correct gauge wire versus the size of your mandrel or your dowel rod. If you're doing a large jump ring like this one I'm going to show you, you would want to use a 16 gauge wire or bigger. You would not want to use a real fine wire. The jump ring wouldn't stay together and it would be a very flimsy chain. So the smaller dowel rods, you could use like a 20 gauge or a 22 gauge, a smaller gauge wire. So you stick the wire in the hole, and this just allows you to wrap the wire easier. It's just a lot easier to get that coil wrapped around. Now, I make the offer of purchasing your own jump rings because a lot of these patterns take hundreds of jump rings, and it is time consuming. So just so you know, you can purchase your own pre-made jump rings, but you should always know how to make them. So you could roll this all the way or as much as you needed. Then I'm gonna cut that off. Just tap that down a bit there. And then clip it from the hole. So you can slide the coil to the top. And next I'm going to slide this into my V-block. And this way I can make a little saw line, a little file line, so I know I have a spot for my saw blade to start. And I'm just gonna start sawing through one side of that coil. And you can see, kind of shake your frame, and jump rings come right off. And it's best to cut your own jump rings with a saw. This makes the split just that thin amount of material like your saw blade, so it's not a big gap. If you cut your jump rings like with wire cutters, I'll just cut one from the coil. They're not as pretty. You're gonna have a pinched in, and when you close them, it's not a smooth, it doesn't line up really nicely, and it just doesn't look right, and sometimes they're a little sharp. So once you've cut your jump rings, how you want to open and close them is really simple. You'll take your chain nose, the flat pointy pliers, and you always want to twist to open the jump ring so you can weave it and make your patterns, and then you want to twist and wiggle to close them shut. There we go. And then it's almost like invisible where where it was cut. You never take one end and then the other and pull it apart and then try to put it together. it's never gonna line up right. It's gonna look awkward. So twist to open and twist to close. I can show you on some little smaller ones too. So you would take one side and then the other and twist to open, and then just twist and kind of wiggle to close that jump ring. Some sets of jump rings that you buy will come with these little rings with slits in them, and they're actually really nice. They're made to open and close jump rings. So depending on how wide your wire, your jump ring is, you would pick the slot. You kind of put it right here between your first two little knuckles on your finger. You slide your jump ring in and hold the other side, and you can just twist, and then you twist to close. So they're kind of nice. They're not as bulky as the pliers, and you can buy these pretty cheap. Sometimes you may need to work with two at a time, so they're kind of interesting little gadgets. Get the right slit, so work them both, but that works also, these little guys. So that's how you would cut your own jump rings and open and close your own jump rings. And putting them together in a pattern is really what you want to pick. If you pick the jump ring route, you would just need to find your pattern online and open and weave those together. They do make a curved version of the chain nose pliers, which kind of help if you're trying to weave your jump rings into smaller patterns. Now next, let me get my steel plate out. If you wanted to just manipulate and do some free-formed wire, you could take like a little section, cut it. I would kind of file the ends to make them a little nicer, rounder. Just kind of smooth the ends a bit with your file. Take the round nose pliers, kind of make a loop on one end. Loop that. Make sure it's, you might switch to the chain nose to squeeze it together a little bit more so it's nice and tight. And then you can kind of just manipulate the wire. Maybe you'll have a shape though. You might figure out like a shape or a design you can follow, but you know, you could maybe just kind of curve and do some free form designs with it. Then have the other end so you can curl and make another loop to link them together. And use the rawhide to get it a little bit straightened up. And I like to come in and do a little bit of forging where I would hammer. This is a little small ball peen, like little hammer, to kind of make nice little forged hammer marks on my piece. Then flip it over, use my rawhide again just to straighten up that length. Then you can make another one, just another, maybe it has a specific shape or design, or you might just be kind of just making it up as you go along. Loop one end. And then just kind of make some free-formed shapes. And there are so many different designs you can find to create different styles of chain online, and you'll get some handouts too with some designs, and the students' examples too. We'll have a lot of different designs. Okay, there we go. Just flatten that a little bit more. And you can, like this student did part brass and part copper, you could combine, you know, different metals in the chain. You could do a lot of variations. Now I'm gonna take a jump ring to link them together. So you can kind of do like a combination of just free form shapes and jump rings. So that's to close it up. There we go. So you could keep creating the links, and you could make like bracelets or a chain. I would also like you guys to kind of create your own clasp. The simple version is like an S shape. There's variations, or a figure 8. You can see there's all different kind of little variations here of little S clasps. Some are long, some are different shapes. Some have the little balls on the ends of the wires, like I showed you, and I'm going to demo with that. But it's basically kind of a figure 8 shape, or an S shape. So one end gets closed tight, and that's where a jump ring would be. It would be hooked to the end of your chain, and then you may have like a slightly larger one, maybe not this large, but for the other end, and it would slide in. This actually should be a little bit closer. There we go. And that's how it would go on the ends of your piece. And you'll see lots of student examples. I have lots that I'll show you also. So let's get to the steel plate. So here's the little, the wire that I showed you where we balled up the ends. I'm gonna take the round nose pliers and curl one end where it's touching, and then the opposite curl for the bigger end, and kind of slightly just bend up that little end and leave it slightly open. And again, I like to use a little bit of forging on the clasps. I think it makes them just look a little prettier. So kind of hammer that end, and if you didn't want the balls so prominent, you could kind of tap those, and you would not have to have the little balls on the end of the wire. You could do different variations like I showed you of the class. This one's a really fun one that a student did with a nice little spiral, so you could just really play around. I do suggest like the student, there's their version, just make it maybe work with the chain. This, I would say, is a little small. I think just design wise for this type of chain, I would maybe have made it just slightly bigger, or maybe with a little bit thicker wire. So just make sure it fits really well with the design. It's a great shape though. The clasp is a great shape, and you can see it works really easily. That's how it slides out and slides into that. So just make sure that it works well with your design. Also, for this project you have to do some sort of stone setting, whether it's a soldered bezel setting or a tab setting, and some sort of chain work. You can combine them into 2 separate projects. Like this would be your chain project, and then the ring that I set earlier, that would be your stone setting project. You would have to turn both those in, or you can combine both the techniques into one project. If your chain part of your project does not require a clasp, because I've had students do kind of wall hanging pieces that's all chain work, or it's more of a decorative type of chain piece other than a wearable. That's fine, and it doesn't require a clasp. I still just want you to make one, and you can just submit that with the project. But your chain work can be more sculptural or decorative. It doesn't have to be a wearable piece. So that finishes up the demos for project 2. Can't wait to see you guys, your ideas for this project. Thank you.